before any handover is rotate. Nice. Nice.
It's showtime.
Heated grip with Yamaha XT660R. These are both R's. This one's a couple of years old. So is that one. These are what we're fitting. Oxford heat grips. They're really good. What should be fun? First stage is taking these ends off. I'm going to need torques to do it. These are the bar ends. Next stage, you need to cut these grips off the bike. You're going to need a Stanley knife to do it. Take your time with this. Takes a little bit of patience. This is the brake cleaner. If you're not using a Stanley knife, retract it, health and safety. If you can, try to do this in one clean cut. Whoa. It takes practice.
Depends on the quality and the age of your grips. These are almost new, and then winter's come along, so we're banging grips on the bikes. So here's the kit, standard Oxford stiff. It's a really simple setup. So you've got your mount for your controller. They've provided super glue. I'm not really a big fan of that. I prefer to use hot grip glue. Controller for each side, and then this one just feeds the power, and it just really is so simple. Connects to your battery. The only thing with the throttle side is this is a relatively recent grip, and it's got a nylon tube, so if I push down really hard, I'm going to end up possibly damaging the throttle tube, so this one always takes a little bit more care and consideration. They're as tough as old boots.
Plastic tube.
And this is the tube you want to try not to cut through, because a lot of people use a lot of different implements. Just use a Stanley knife, don't apply too much pressure. Obviously if you screw up, you're up for a new throttle assembly. So the next thing Luke's going to do is he's going to take the seat off of his XT660, and then he's going to have to remove this side panel, which consists of, Luke's going to undo this bolt here, this hex bolt. This side panel's got to come off, so a little push in and it will come out. There's a cable tie there because we've crashed a bike a few times. And then we're going to have routing for the wiring.
Whenever you take off panels or seats, find someone to put these first. It'll make your life a little easier.
You'll see once it all comes apart how, once the blue panel comes off, how they're interlocked. So it's time to fit the heated grips. They're always going to be a bit of a devil to get on depending on what bars you've got. Heated grip glue, which is fairly inexpensive, and we've also decided how we want this to end up. So the end position, you know, we don't want it ending up like that when it's on the bike. I'll give you a quick example. On mine we've got the junction, the wire if you like, just coming out at the bottom here, and that's the end result we want on Luke's bike. So effectively it will kind of be a bit like that. That's the end result. Heated grip glue is super inexpensive. I just really don't like super glue. You don't have to put it all around, because what's going to happen is as I add the grip, I'm going to rotate the grip, which is going to make the glue go all over the handlebar. We all have different techniques. I'm a rotator, so I push and rotate. And I've kept the cables for the grip attached and cable tied together so that they're not long and in my way.
You can see the amount of force Dad's having to put into this.
Maybe there. Come to the end. Beautiful. And that cable should come around just nicely there. not interfere with the movement of the clutch. What's important here when you fit them is when the clutch retracts and you pull it in, you don't want this piece, if I brought it up anymore, you want this piece stopping the clutch from actuating. One of those things you just got to give a little bit of thought to, because obviously I've just now applied glue and in 5 to 10 minutes that's not going to want to come off.
It's quite a useful tool. It's just, think of it as a screwdriver, but you can put different attachments on it, which means I can just get this and do it pretty damn quickly. Use it Torx.
So as I tighten up these bolts, I'm going to go for about 10 Newton meters, which if you've got a very expensive bit of tooling you can work out, or otherwise do it by hand, but it's not a vast amount. It's a lot less than would hold a spark plug in place. So if you're lucky not to have crashed your bike, that's how to release the top divot. You just push in the centre and the outer part will come away, like so. And the bottom one on this bike's held on with a cable tie, which with a pair of snips will soon be fitted. So this side panel is also held on, or at least in my case was held on there. It's a bit bugger to pull out. And now what we've got is adequate routing for heated grips. We're going to put the controller on this side. These bags are really cool because they're like sealed, but you can just rip them open with one hand. Mount for the controller can't easily go here. Unless you do it at an kind of a weirdy angle, I suppose that's possible. So we're actually going to put it here, and in order to achieve that I'm just going to straighten this slightly so that it's a little bit more upright, but it just seems the right place on this bike. So we're going to have controller, heated grip, all the wiring is going to work its way down underneath here, and it's going to follow the bike's wirings. It's going to go down there, and it's going to follow along here from where you check your oil, and then everything's going to kind of end up in here with one power line running along, and then it will pop up here, negative, positive. So Luke's just removed the battery cover, which sits over the battery. All you have to do is get this piece of wiring loom, give it a good old tug out of the way, a couple of bolts hold it in, and then the battery cover will come off. It's held in here. The easiest way to straighten the mount is to hold it in a vise like this, and all I'm going to do now is just turn it. It's pretty straightforward stuff, really. I wouldn't put my fingers in there if I was you. Okay, I'm not going to overcook it. I'm quite happy with that. I'm going to take it out and we'll take it to the bike and see if it's made a massive difference or not. Okay, that's better, but I need to go further. What we got now? That's looking real nice. So Luke and I were just having a little chat.
Yeah.
About how to fit this, and what we're going to say to you as a guide is, when you fit a grip to the throttle side of your bike, the last thing you want to be doing is putting the grip on and yanking it, rotating it in the direction of full throttle, holding it there and rotating. What's going to happen is you're going to mess up the assembly in here. You are going to stress or stretch your throttle cable, probably do some damage to whatever's down here. So I'm going to ask you, or at least advise you, when you put these on, to rotate it, and only rotate it as you're putting it on in the direction that is throttle stop, throttle off, okay?
Which is this way.
Yeah, no other direction. I'm sure there's people who put it on the other way and went, oh, it did no harm, but I found that when I did it to a ZX9, I got slack in my throttle cable because of it, and it was never the same after. It was like I'd messed something up in here. Luke's just going to blob some glue on there.
How much?
That's enough, great. Let's get that grip on. I'm just going to help him by holding the handlebars. Hey, I've had it on some bikes where they just like push on, and on others where you've got to put up a bit of a fight. But I'd rather nobody stretch their throttle cables, because that's just going to slow the nation of bikers down.
The same technique we used with our Kawasaki's when we fitted these, and it's worked out beautifully.
So I'm now looking at the position of what's the difference here with full throttle. Last thing I want is this coming up and interfering with anything.
Yes.
And that looks pretty good.
It's like that, that's a good guide. Bring it up to the mount.
So with the kit supplied, and now that I've straightened this out, we're going to look to affix the controller onto the mount, using the 4 screws. And then on the XT660 I'm going to choose the 2 longest, 2 washers, 2 of these, and you'll see what happens. Part of the wiring for the throttle one, again, it's just going to follow the bike's wiring, come down. We're just going to have it hang out here for a bit, because this is where we're going to have a little junction party in here. And Luke's now just following the rest of the wiring with the passenger side. Every time I meet these on motorcycles, they're always so tight. And you'll say, well, the manufacturer did it. Well, actually, these handlebars weren't fitted by the manufacturer, so they didn't do it. So I'm taking out the original bolts and washers, because the amount of vibrations these bikes can produce, having washers is like a really good idea. So don't forget them when you fit your Oxfords. I'm not going to use the original bolts because they're not quite long enough, so I'm just going to leave that dangling for a second. What I've done is I've wired up the controller. I've got it in this kind of orientation, and then I'm going to have a washer. I want one of the longer bolts to go through, and then that on the back. Wow! You can tell it's going to be fun when I get to fit it. Here we go. It's where you need like 50 hands. I just need to get a few threads in, make sure it's not cross-threaded or anything like that. It should be good. Change of tool required. And now it's just a matter of getting the orientation right. So what I've got at the moment is it's kind of loose. And what I want to make sure is that the handlebars are back where they used to be. How's it look to you, Luke?
Good. You can only really tell when you get onto the bike and feel the levers.
Absolutely.
Every bike's different. So if you had a Yamaha R1, you'd have to find a different place
For
for
all I
this.
know, this mount might change, but we just bought them, so feels good, feels good.
Before you put everything back together, don't be afraid to check that this is working, because it might be faulty, you don't know. It could be one of the million. A faulty heater controller, brand new.
So at the end of every job, what I'm going to ask Luke to do is to go over every nut, every bolt that we've removed from his motorcycle and make sure that it's torqued and to a level he's happy with. Nice. So Luke's just now routing the cable for the controller on his bike. It's going to follow the same path as the cable for his throttle. We're not going to cable tie anything until we're absolutely happy that the throttle can move on its own without help.
The most important bit when you do this wiring is you need to make sure your steering can go lock to lock without any interference.
So everything's kind of dangling down at the moment whilst it's routed, and we'll look at cable tying it shortly. So Luke's just now going to connect the cabling together. The controller's got 3 terminals. 2 of them connect to the heated grips, and one of them is going to connect to this, which we're going to run up and under here. Actually going to go up and under the tank, and we're going to keep it away from all of these super hot areas. That's a great job. I found this on all these Oxford kits, that they always take a little bit of a push to get in. Something that we've noticed on previous jobs is the wording. There you go. There's the word Oxford. I always thought it would be printed in a way that worked for the rider, maybe not. So Luke's going to grab the power one now. It's going to bring the entire power cable out off the bike. There we go. And this piece here, he is going to route up underneath the tank, and it's going to come out here. So I'm going to help him. If you grab that end, Luke, you try and push it up. I'm going to look for it. Not up there, up here. Success! That's your power, so it's kind of a Y shape. You've got one wire coming up, splitting off. Fantastic. This little bunch of friends here are all going to live down there. Luke's going to look at routing this wire up nice and high, so it's not going to touch anything. It's also going to go under here, and we're going to try and keep that wire away from anything where it might chafe. And right, we'll do some cable tidying. So just adding cable ties to the bike, and one of the things I'm doing is I'm not cutting the ends off, so as I'm applying them to the bike, I'm leaving them dangling, so I know where they are, and every time I add one, I check the steering of the bike, check the cabling for any chafing or issues before I move on to the next one, and then it will be like a 2-minute job at the end of this, just to go around the bike and cut all of the cable ties off. Wow, it's almost stealth. Areas of the bike, and what I'm finding is, excuse me, eating a cable tie, what I'm finding is, as I route it, I end up with more left over. It's our first power on test, so great. So I'll let the bike run and then we'll test the temperatures on these. No point in killing the battery on it. So a good way to test the temperatures with one of these. They're like 10 quid off of eBay. Don't expect instant heat from your heated grips. It's just not going to happen like that. But they're running at 28 already. 30, they're on the way up. I can feel the heat. Yeah, on the way up as well. So we're just going to snip off the ends of the cable ties now as I go around the motorcycle. I like to do it as tidy as possible so I don't leave any jaggedy ends sticking out. So feel free to rotate the tool. Quick example of that, just to bore you all, is this flatter edge, not this edge. So if I cut with this edge, I leave a piece of the cable tie sticking out if I cut with this edge. So as I approach the motorcycle, this flatter edge, I'm going to run down to the end of the cable tie and take it off. I'm not going to have any bits sticking out. And you'll think that's absolutely, why would you bother? Well, when you wash your bike, do you want to be stabbed by bits of cable tie? You get to put the bike back together now. So while we're at it, we just thought we'd change the spark plug on the bike and put in a new air filter whilst we're there. It doesn't take more than a couple of minutes to do, and it just kind of made sense. So its panel's back on after having a new spark plug and air filter. The oil was good, we only changed it a couple of months ago, and these are really easy bikes to work on. Really easy. I think I'll do the battery cover now. Luke's using the tool I want. That's cool. I like it. Bolts are so fiddly. So I'm kind of happy that we can still check the oil level on the bike without any major issues. It's all good, nice and tidy. Inserting it, locking it down. So cable ties work better for us because we're continually taking our bikes apart for one reason or another, and the little clips just seem to get lost over time, whether they're in the lanes or whatever. What I've asked Luke to do is just go through all of his controls and make sure that he's happy with how everything's laid out and functioning, and make sure everything's working before we take it out on the road. It feels good, yeah? So before any handover, it's road test time. And again, this is just to triple check the operation, make sure everything's doing its thing. Don't forget to turn your grips on.
The way we...
The little rascal has fluid. As was it?
This is the end of the trail for me.
Thanks.
Heck you, kid.